How France receives billions of euros in aid from Africa annually, through the colonial CFA Franc and first refusal pacts, imposed on 14 African former colonies. All Western countries know about it but keep silent. Imagine a currency that holds the echoes of a bygone era, a financial tether to a colonial past. This is the CFA Franc, a symbol of both stability and discontent for 14 African nations. But the winds of change are blowing. 3 countries have recently severed ties, bringing the number using the currency to 11, sparking a crucial question: is the CFA Franc a necessary anchor or a gilded cage hindering true economic independence? This story isn't just about finance, it's about the fight for self-determination, the yearning for a future unburdened by historical baggage. Kilimanjaro News Network delves into the complex arguments on both sides, from the promises of stability to the hidden costs of limited control. We'll explore the potential of a new, truly African currency, a symbol of self-reliance and the potential to unlock economic growth. We embark on a journey through the heart of this economic debate. We'll meet the young voices demanding change, the experts dissecting the intricate financial landscape, and the leaders navigating a path toward a brighter future. Will the CFA Franc remain a relic of the past, or will it find a way to adapt and evolve alongside the continent it serves? Join us as we explore the answer, and together, we might just rewrite the narrative. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Kilimanjaro News Network. Click the bell icon to be notified for more interesting and in-depth investigations and analyses of events happening throughout the continent and the diaspora. The CFA Franc, a currency currently shared by 11 African nations, carries the weight of a complex history. Its origins in France's colonial past fuel a heated debate about fairness and its relevance in the modern era. Importantly, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger recently announced their withdrawal from the West African Economic and Monetary Union, UEMOA, and, consequently, the CFA Franc. Established in 1945 to serve French colonies, the CFA Franc exists in 2 forms: the West African CFA Franc, XOF, and the Central African CFA Franc, XAF. Both were pegged to the French franc, until its conversion to the euro, offering stability but raising concerns about African control over their economies. The 14, previously, member countries had a formal agreement with France. While France guaranteed the convertibility of the CFA franc to the euro, previously the French franc, acting as a financial backstop, this arrangement came with significant drawbacks for African nations. African nations had limited power to set interest rates or manage their exchange rates, hindering their ability to address specific economic challenges. A decision by France to devalue its currency could negatively impact African economies heavily reliant on imports. This risk became a harsh reality in 1994 when a 50% devaluation of the French franc significantly impacted member countries. The cost of imports soared, while exports became cheaper but generated less income due to the decreased value of the CFA franc. Estimates suggest this devaluation resulted in a loss of up to 25% in the GDP of some member countries. Beyond these limitations, France benefited from the system through seigniorage, the profit earned on issuing currency. The 50% reserve requirement held in the French treasury translated to billions of euros annually. Estimates suggest this figure could be between 5 billion euros and 10 billion euros depending on economic factors. France audaciously previously charged interest to these countries to have access to their own reserves. Currently, member countries do not have immediate access to their reserves, hindering their ability to respond to economic emergencies or pursue development projects. This essentially provided France with an interest-free loan while limiting African control over their own finances. Through this mechanism alone, France receives billions of euros in aid from its former African countries annually. Beyond the CFA franc, right of first refusal. The CFA franc is just one facet of a broader economic relationship between France and these African nations. Many former French colonies have signed agreements granting France a right of first refusal on mineral and resource exploration within their borders. This means that if a foreign company wants to explore for resources in these countries, France has the first opportunity to match the offer and secure the rights. Given the fact that France has installed puppet governments throughout its former colonies, this process is a mere formality. Due to opaque relationship between France and these puppet regimes, the exact financial gain for France from this arrangement is difficult to quantify. However, considering the vast resource wealth of these African nations, estimates suggest it could be worth billions of euros annually. This not only limits the ability of these countries to negotiate the best possible deals for their resources, but also potentially hinders their economic development by restricting access to other potential investors. Demand for change. Many young Africans view the CFA franc and resource right of first refusal agreements as symbols of continued French influence and a barrier to economic independence. They advocate for a more self-determined path, with some calling for a complete break from these unequal contracts. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, championed by French puppet Alassane Ouattara, president of Côte d'Ivoire, has proposed the ECO as a new single currency. However, some see it as a cosmetic change, still pegged to the euro and offering similar limitations on monetary policy. A call for a truly African currency. Proponents argue for a new African currency backed by the continent's own resources, such as natural resources or a basket of various currencies. This would grant African nations full control over monetary policy, allowing them to tailor economic strategies to their specific needs and potentially unlock further economic growth. The future of the CFA franc. The debate over the CFA franc is far from settled, especially with the recent withdrawal of 3 member countries. While it offers a degree of stability, a growing chorus demands a more self-determined economic future for Africa. The success of any new currency, including those potentially adopted by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, will depend on strong regional economic institutions, transparent governance, and a commitment to long-term economic development. Kilimanjaro News Network would like to hear from you directly. Join the conversation. What aspects of the current relationship between France and these African nations require re-evaluation in the 21st century? This could encompass trade agreements, military presence, or development aid programs. Is a complete overhaul necessary, or can a more equitable partnership be forged? Following the recent withdrawal of 3 countries raises the question, is the CFA franc a stepping stone or a stumbling block on the path to a truly independent African currency? What are the potential benefits and drawbacks of a new, unified African currency, and how can these nations ensure its success? The debate surrounding the CFA franc highlights the broader issue of neocolonialism. How can African nations navigate their economic relationships with former colonial powers to achieve true self-determination, while still benefiting from potential partnerships? Consider what would be the reaction from Western governments if China or Russia were exploiting Africa in such a manner. Looking beyond the economic dimension, how can African nations foster a stronger sense of regional identity and cooperation to address the challenges they face collectively? Is the African Union well equipped to lead this endeavor, and what steps can be taken to strengthen its role? Send us your messages. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to Kilimanjaro News Network, the authentic voice of Africa. Scan our QR code and go to our website for more news coverage and unique analysis. Kilimanjaro News Network broadcasts in Swahili, Arabic, English, and French.